So hello everyone and welcome back to this session where we will talk about research and innovation. IAAP EU is not only organizing events and webinars, publishing newsletters and policy updates, we are also contributing to the evolution and innovation of the accessibility field with various research projects that we contribute to. So today we will hear from three exciting projects where IAAP EU is or has been a partner, focusing on accessibility and training from different perspectives. So that's why I wanted to keep the questions posed on when having to do with higher education to this session. So in the panel discussion, we will be joined by Magdalena Fresecas, who is the Funding and Grants Officer at the European Disability Forum, EDF. But we will first listen to a couple of examples from our research. And I believe we have a captioning issue with one of the speakers, so or nobody's confirming, but I think I will give the floor first to Professor Dr. Gottfried Zimmermann from the Stuttgart Media University in Germany. If you're prepared to go first, it would be good. And Gottfried is also the IAAP-DACH, so the German, Austrian and German-speaking part of Switzerland chapter of IAAP, one of the founders of that chapter, and also a member of the advisory council, the local advisory council of DACH chapter. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about the IWAC project, integrating accessibility courses to higher education in ICT. So, please, Gottfried, tell us about this exciting project.
Yeah, thank you, Susanne. What a wonderful birthday party today. So, yeah, most has been said about this introduction for the project. I can give you two words for my message. It's more training. That's what I want to emphasize. And we heard a lot about this already today. And I'm gonna make a scientific experiment with you right now. So this is a scientific session. So we developed a training method that can basically train you for digital accessibility in the matter of seconds. So you just need to watch the screen. So there are many accessibility topics, for example, the EN standard, sign language, WCAG, UAN, and then some words like retinitis pigmentosa, Word, PowerPoint, and lots of other things. And for those who cannot see the screen, so just a lot of puzzle pieces falling down. And have you learned something now? Have you developed your skills? Unfortunately, this method doesn't work. We know that, and it's also not inclusive. That's the other problem, because it works only, or it would work only for those who can see. So what we need is really a systematic approach for learning. We need really a campaign for learning of web accessibility skills in higher education. And so this project is called IWAC, short or long integration of web accessibility courses in ICT programs. And it was a joint work between FUNCA and IAAP Nordic and 3 universities in Sweden, Germany, and Italy. And the goal was to spread the know-how on web accessibility through higher education. And we all know the problem is that it's actually, this topic is rarely taught at universities. So I know that where it is taught also is in Dortmund, where my colleague Susanne Dirks teaches, and she will tell us maybe more about that. But we found that alone in my Bundesland, Baden-Württemberg, we have over 20 universities, and only 2 of them offered courses that had the topic web accessibility in them. One of the problems is that many teachers have no or only little knowledge on digital accessibilities. They don't dare to teach that because they feel like they're not prepared for that. And students are increasingly demanding this, but it's not really offered. So IWAC has actually been completed at the beginning of this year, and we developed 5 different deliverables. One is good practices in teaching. So examples how accessibility is currently taught at universities. We developed a handbook where teachers who are interested in teaching that get introduced to the topic. They're being taught about legislation, policies, about fundamental concepts for learning, and about teaching instruments, how to teach this topic. Then we have a material, what we called case-based training material, that are like exercises that you can do as a workshop with students. For example, an accessible customer journey to be developed with the students, or how to make complex images and mathematical formulas accessible as a workshop together, or an exercise to set up computers for users with various disabilities. And we developed 2 MOOCs, one for teachers and one for students, and they are actually available for everybody. I'm gonna give you the links to the MOOCs later when I have the chat again here, because now I'm screen sharing. And we developed recommendations altogether, how to go about this topic, how to get students motivated, and how to integrate this into the curricula. And we developed all these materials in 4 languages, and that is English, German, Italian, and Swedish. It's all available. It's under a Creative Commons license. And if you are a teacher, or if you're otherwise interested in teaching this topic, just go for it, and it's available. And I just want to give you a sneak peek to one of the courses. It's called Accessible Learning and Teaching. This is the English version, but as I told you, this is also available in Italian, Swedish, and German. And it starts with a forum where people introduce each other. There are 2 weeks. 1 week is how to teach, basically how to approach the topic, what are the regulatory and other backgrounds. We talk about UDL, Universal Design for Learning, and we have some personas integrated into this where we exemplarily present users with disabilities. And then in the 2nd week, we talk about how to make documents accessible, videos, Word, and PowerPoint. So typical things that are used by teachers. And then we also have a quiz and forums where teachers can basically, that are participating in this MOOC, can actually correspond with each other and discuss things. So as a MOOC, this is not thought to be a one-on-one consulting. This is really a group, a community that participates in this effort. And all the parts of these MOOCs are also available for free as OERs, open educational resources, under Creative Commons license. And partners were Funka led this project, and then we, Stuttgart Media University, also Mid-Universität in Mid-Sweden, and University of Genova, and IAAP Nordic participated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gottfried, for this. I can't get my camera working, so thank you. So training, more training. That's kind of the short version of that. So very good, and thank you for making a scientific experiment with the audience. I think I didn't expect that. Was really cool. So I hope that that we have our student from the United States, but Swedish student Anna Hammarskjöld with us now, and that the captions are working so that we can talk about the users as experts project.
Oh, good. Hi. Oh, hi. Yes, hi. My name is Anna, and yeah, we have a so I decided to join this because I have a disability. I am deaf, hard of hearing. And during the pandemic, I was frustrated by the fact that everybody was using Zoom, but Zoom was not accessible to me. So it was hard for me. It was very frustrating for me. And I can't remember how I came across the course, but it looked very interesting, and it looked like a very great opportunity for me to maybe further my career or switch to accessibility training, just because I love technology and accessibility, and it's very important to me. And I thought, oh wow, that's like a great idea to teach users how to be experts in accessibility. That's pretty cool. And I actually think like I would like to be able to influence the future. I would like to remind people to always think about accessibility when you have an idea. You think about it from the outset. You have to like think about it from the very beginning. So you have to keep that in mind all the time. And I would say, do not release a product unless it's accessible to all. I was just so mad about Zoom. Zoom is not my favorite thing, but I've become an expert on Zoom now. But it still doesn't do what I wanted to do, but that's okay. That's fine.
So just to give a little bit of context to this. So the project that Anna is referring to is called Users as Experts. So this is the training course that was provided in a research project that IAAP and a secondary school in Sweden was creating. So the idea or the background for that project is really that the Web Accessibility Directive has driven demand for accessibility among public sector bodies. We have heard that already today, and that there's a lack of experts. But at the same time, the unemployment rate among people with disabilities is much higher usually than in the population at large. So at the same time, we think that people with disabilities are the real experts in accessibility because they live accessibility. I do that myself. When things are not accessible to me, I really feel the barriers in my everyday life. So the experiences of people with disabilities are key to understanding the importance of the topic. And we thought it would be possible to kind of combine the demand for professional expertise with the many unemployed users with disabilities, so that we could make kind of a win-win situation out of this. And Anna was one of the students who participated. So all the way from the US. So really, again, waking up early in the morning to make sure that she could make the courses also in the Central European time. So can you tell us a little bit about the course? What did you learn in that course? You said it was about technology and you love technology, but what did you actually learn?
Yeah, I learned a little bit more about the world, and I have to find out the world, and I thought it was interesting. And I thought that some of the words were not far-reaching enough. I think it needs a little bit more. I don't know. I happen to be the one passionate about my own disability, but I can't forget others with other types of disability too. It can't just be about me, but I was just thinking that it doesn't really go far enough. Like I feel like in my idea world, everything should be accessible to me. I mean, like if you blind people they can hear everything. So even if they can't see stuff, they can hear. But for those who cannot hear, they cannot hear everything, but they can see everything. So it's really funny how that works. I'm just saying that it's just a video, fine. It's accessible to all except for the deaf people. If you don't have anything like caption or sign language interpreters, the video is not very helpful for people with hearing loss. I just want to, so I learned a lot about regulations and how it didn't cover private entities, and I kind of feel like it should cover private entities as well, not just public entities, but also private entities. But I thought it was very fascinating, and I noticed something. So I was just thinking, so I learned a lot, and it's a lot to keep in mind, and I learned about what I can do and how I can affect just by writing people, just by communicating with people. Yeah. Sorry. Hey, no. Sorry, my cat was in the middle. Sorry. Yeah. So I learned. So I have to it made me more passionate about wanting to be an influencer, wanting to be able to be part of this department of accessibility. I just want to be able to make sure that everything is accessible. So yeah, so I learned a lot. So it's a lot of regulations I have to learn, and it's pretty cool. So you just have to follow the rules sometimes. It's like, well, okay, it's not far-reaching, but it's okay. But it could be better, I think. But that's okay.
So what I think was interesting for us who kind of developed the project and kept working in it was that we had a very diverse group of students. So, and some people said this won't work because you have people with cognitive disabilities, hearing disabilities, you have deaf sign language users, you have blind, visually impaired, motor impairments, you cover everything. And we said, yeah, that's kind of the idea. And everyone said that this won't work. So we thought, yeah, we need to do this. And do you have any thoughts about the diversity of the group of students? Anna, how did that feel from your perspective?
Oh, it felt great. I got to learn a lot about the disability, and it made me much more aware of other things out there, and a lot of things to keep in mind. I learned a lot from it, and I loved it. I got to learn their stories. I got to it was just a lot to think about, but it was very good. I mean, I liked it because it's like, oh yeah, we can think of ways to do it. We may not be able to cover everything, but we can take the best parts and try to implement them somehow. Yeah, so I thought it was great. Everybody learned from each other, I think. So like I learned a viewpoint of this person, and I think a lot of people learn from my viewpoint as well. So I thought it was great. I loved it. So that's all I can think of.
So I'm happy to hear that you are now even more eager to be an influencer and to commit to making the world a more accessible place and more inclusive. So we need all the boots on the ground we can have. So welcome to the community and keep up the good work. And I'm sure we will, or our roads will cross again. Thank you, Anna, and sorry for the problems with the captioning earlier, but I think this worked out in the end. So thank you, Malcolm, also for solving the problems. So the third project that we are going to listen to a short presentation of is a project called UPower, or UPower, the Web Accessibility Directive. So this is also from Germany. We have a bias towards Germany in the scientific panel, but Dr. Susanne Dirks from the Institution of Rehabilitation at the Technical University of Dortmund in Germany is going to talk to us about the empowering users to provide feedback on the lack of accessibility. And I believe Susanne has also slides to show.
Yes, I have. Yeah. Welcome. Thank you very much for inviting me, and hello everyone. Good afternoon. I'm not able to share my now it should work. So yeah, hello again everyone, and thanks for inviting me. I will be sharing my screen now and hope you can see my slides.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so yes, I would like to introduce you to the UPower WAD project. That's a project that, in contrast to the project Gottfried was introducing us to, is still work in progress. So I will just give you an idea about what we want to do and what we want to achieve in the project. The project, as you might have guessed from the name, is about improving web accessibility and empowering people with disabilities based on the standards of the Web Accessibility Directive. And the focus of our research lies on the implementation and usage of the feedback mechanism required by the Web Accessibility Directive. As you all might know, all public sector bodies in Europe are required to provide an accessibility statement and a feedback option for perceived barriers on their websites since at least 2020. Although the feedback mechanism is now implemented on most public institution websites, it's currently very rarely used. That was also shown in the annual reports of the monitoring agencies published at the end of 2021. So at least two questions arise from that. The first question is, what are the reasons for the lack of feedback on many still existing barriers? And secondly, what can be done to enable end users to use their power of influence more effectively? The first slide gives you some overview about the administrative stuff about the project. The U-Power project is funded by the European Union under the Erasmus Plus grant program, and the project consortium consists of 4 European project partners: the European Blind Union, which is headquartered in France, Funka from Sweden, Synthesis Center of Research and Education from Cyprus, and TU Dortmund University from Germany. The main aim of the project is to raise the awareness and to empower and train people with disabilities to take an active part in the implementation of the Web Accessibility Directive through feedback mechanisms and complaint systems. Based on this main aim or this main question, the following specific project objectives can be derived. The first objective is to involve, empower, and train end users with a disability to fully participate in the Web Accessibility Directive objectives. And the second objective is to broaden the knowledge of people with disabilities on digital accessibility and enable them to provide constructive feedback regarding accessibility issues of public sector websites and mobile applications across Europe. To achieve these goals, we combine different scientific approaches in the U-Power project. We use at least 4 different kind of scientific approaches. We use desktop research, we use surveys and interviews, which are qualitative and quantitative measures to gather and analyze user data. We do intensive data analysis, and we do multiplier events to involve the public and the end users and the public sector bodies into our research. Desktop research we, for instance, use to find out what competencies the different user groups have and what approaches exist to improve media literacy of people with disabilities. The qualitative and quantitative methods we use to capture the experiences and attitudes of end users and public institutions with the existing feedback mechanisms. Data analysis is used to find out if there are already successfully implemented approaches to improve the feedback rate or the quality of feedback. And based on the collected data, we develop a model curriculum for training end users and public sector bodies to give actionable feedback. And last but not least, we are organizing a lot of multiplier events to evaluate our developed practical guidelines to empower and train people with disabilities on web accessibility issues. The project will produce 4 main results. The first thing we want to produce or to develop is a methodological toolkit on how to capture and categorize feedback from users in the context of web accessibility. The second thing we want to achieve is to create an interactive repository of best practices on structuring and reporting web accessibility issues. The third thing we want to do is to develop at least 4 model curricula in the different project languages, which are English, German, French, and Swedish, to set up vocational education training courses on how to train people with disabilities to provide relevant and actionable feedback on web accessibility. And the last thing we want to do is to develop a set of practical guidelines on how to empower people with disabilities to effectively contribute to the Web Accessibility Directive objectives and being able to providing structured and relevant feedback on existing accessibility problems. Currently, we are finalizing the first project result, the toolkit, and we are very much looking forward to publish the toolkit soon on our project website. That was a brief overview of the motivation and goals of the EU Power project, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Susanne. And again, this project is just well, not just starting, but we still have 1.5 years or something to go.
Yeah.
So it's yeah. So we will come back with more kind of hands-on results when the project has moved a little further into the future. So these are 3 examples. All of them has something to do with training or involving users and so on. And let's go on to the panel discussion. And I hope that we also have Magdalena with us in the panel. Yes, now I see Magdalena. It's sometimes really hard. Hi. So I wanted to ask how research and innovation can possibly support the success of the Web Accessibility Directive and improve accessibility in general. So I would like to start with asking Magdalena this question, because from the European Disability Forum side, I know you're involved in some of these projects and also many others, and you're kind of the queen of the research in EDF. So how do you think that the research piece can really support implementation and success of the legislation?
Well, there are for sure many areas that many places which can be improved, but we have few maybe very practical examples or solutions. So, for example, one which could have quite a big impact is that research organizations or innovation could create or put more work in creation of tools which could create in easier way accessible content like websites or apps. So these tools which are used by people to create ICT devices and etc. Automatically would be accessible. So to create accessible content interfaces would be easier. That's for sure one area. Second, it could be research on user interfaces like websites, mobile apps, etc. Interface which would automatically, like in easier way, adapt to needs of users. Because at the moment, sometimes, well, quite often, it's a bit hard to get to or accessibility adjustments or place where we can adjust the application, for example, to screen reader or to people having different needs and different disabilities. So for sure, this direction would be interesting. But maybe the most important part would be to involve people with disability as creators of ideas, as innovators, because very often people with disabilities, they try to solve in technical way their problems. So for example, my colleague on the wheelchair, he adjusted himself his car. So I think that involvement of persons with disabilities in the process of designing research and then implementation of the research, of course, and then creating final product or results or conclusions is I would say that one of the most important things.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So that's kind of from the end user perspective or the disabled persons organization perspective. So if we turn to Gottfried from your angle, focusing on maybe technological development and assistive technology and things like that, what do you see as the most kind of important piece where research can support the implementation of the directive?
Yeah, lots of fields. I'm gonna start with my topic today, more training. It is not always clear how to do the training. So we want to do a sustainable training. So it's okay to look for advice, like if you know nothing, but in the end, you cannot depend on periodical conducting checks for your websites or so. I mean, and for public agencies, that's just not affordable. It's just too costly. You need to have your own experts. Unfortunately, experts at universities, at public agencies do not have lots of resources. They have lots of other things to do, and it's all on top of what they need to do. So one approach that we're actually testing is train on the job and with support of tools. We use an automatic checking tool, and the web admins get their the results weekly, and then we talk with them with the errors. And we all know the automatic tools cover at best 30% or 30 to 40% of the types of errors. But that gives us basically a foothold to also talk about the other errors that can only be checked manually, and to educate the web admins on the overall field and coverage of errors that they can make. And then the second point is how to use the resources wisely. We all have limited resources, and we know that you cannot achieve a complete accessibility at once. You need to go step by step. So what is the low-hanging fruits that we can achieve, and what has the most impact to start with? That's also something that we need to look for. And of course, the whole area of tool support, and with tools, I really mean not just checking tools, but tools that go along with a developer, with a designer, and make them aware of problems right when they code it, so that they can learn on the fly and that they can correct it on the fly.
Okay, many good ideas. Anna, what do you say? What do you think research can do to kind of support accessibility in general and the implementation of the directive?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I get confused with my different languages. Sorry, I'm saying Swedish, and I'm like, no, speak English. What I was just thinking about research. Yeah, we just have to. It'd be good to include people with disabilities in the research, but also I was kind of thinking. I've been sitting here listening on the panel, and I think that maybe what helps is one thing I discovered during the training was that there was no consistency across all feedback tools. So I feel like there needs to be some kind of a standard or consistency for feedback tools. If you want people to be able to use the feedback tool effectively, then they'll all need to be easy to understand and easy to use. And all the various websites we tested had different ways of capturing feedback, and it was very challenging. So I just had an idea. It would be good to have a standard form for feedback.
So that could potentially actually be solved by the U-Power project. So you're kind of feeding into the next speaker. So Susanne, what do you think? How can research and innovation support the successful implementation of the directive and accessibility in general? What's your take on this?
Yeah, so from the viewpoint of rehabilitation science, I think it's still much more user-based and inclusive research needed to be able to more accurately capture the ability and support needs of people with disabilities. So as we have seen in the Easy Reading project, and maybe in some cases as well in the U-Power project, that we as people with, let me say, not a severe disability, are not able to capture fully the needs and abilities, on the other hand, of people with disabilities. So we really need to include them more sincerely into our research projects, because at least in Germany, it's still the case that people with disabilities are only very rarely involved in research projects. And I think that the same goes for technology development projects as well. And in addition, I think we need to focus more on how we can promote and how we can improve the media literacy of people with disabilities. So that's another point. I think, Anna, you mentioned it before, that it's really difficult for someone who is not literate using digital devices and using digital content to handle the feedback mechanism. So that's a point we got from our interviews with end users in the U-Power project as well. So this is one thing I think research should focus on.
Yeah, so that's many good ideas. So now we have a long list of things that we should all try to solve in the future, but that's good. So, and you have all kind of touched upon it a little bit, but I would like to know a little bit more on the knowledge gap. So where do we really have parts of accessibility? Because there has been quite a lot of research during a long time, and accessibility is not a new topic, neither in research nor in kind of the industry, but where do you see the biggest gaps in research or in kind of society or academic knowledge about accessibility? So where we should put the efforts on research and innovation? I don't know if you would like to continue, Susanne. You can kind of catch on to what you said.
Yeah, so what I'm interested in the moment is how to enable end users with severe disabilities to participate in the digital world. So I think there are already good tools, good technology, good devices which can help people with sensory difficulties or disabilities or motor disabilities, but how about people with severe cognitive disabilities or multimodal disabilities? So how can we ensure that these people are also able to participate in the digital world? So I think that's a huge gap in the rehabilitation scientific research. And the second gap I see is more in the development of accessible technologies. So I think we need more frameworks and tools to enable developer to implement accessibility into technical products and technologies without being accessibility experts. So we really need to have frameworks. We need to have content management systems which somehow help developers to be aware of accessibility and to help them to implement it accordingly into their systems.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would like to see, that it's kind of automatically becomes accessible and we don't need to have experts. So we could all retire or go on holiday because it would kind of solve itself. But so I'm happy if you can solve that. If you via your research can kind of bridge that gap, I would be really happy. So Magdalena, you touched upon it a little bit in your first presentation, but where do you think that the biggest gaps are, or the most important gaps that you would like research to kind of bridge?
Yeah, we have a similar view to Susanne. So for us, for example, now the priority in research would be accessibility for persons with intellectual disabilities, because this is an area which is like very, we would say, not very focused on. When like technical accessibility is more attractive topic, intellectual disabilities and intellectual accessibility is not so much. Also, I think that what would be very interesting would be actually what your project did. So I think it's really great that it exists, because this is also something that EDF finds very, very important, like how to train people with disabilities in proper and efficient way, an accessible way, of course, to become accessibility experts. I think this is important. What else could be is that when there are research teams, the added value would be to include persons with disabilities to this research teams. And I said it already that the persons with disabilities should be like consulted from the beginning of the research when the topic is being created, or involved and included. And I think this is, well, I'm repeating myself, but I think this is crucial for having a really achieving really important and significant impact. I think also one more thing which could be improved is the communication of research, because we see that research is, even if the research is extremely interesting or is related with disabilities or accessibility, it's not communicated to people with disabilities. It stays in the research world somewhere in academia. So I think that communication of these results of research would be very, of course, published and presented in an accessible way. Targeting people with disabilities would be very useful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so we just learned from the last panel that standards are not known enough and requirements need to be communicated in a better way, and that also goes for research. I agree with you. That's kind of a gap between the users or the receivers of the results and the people who are working in the field. So that's very, I agree with you absolutely. So Anna, where is the knowledge gaps that research could bridge? Do you have an idea of where there's more research needed in your view?
Yeah, I'm sorry, can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I was just thinking that, yeah, we do need to involve disabled people, but also, I was just thinking that we can also involve those experts, I mean, like teachers, people who are used to working with intellectual disabilities every day. They can help us too as well. So I was kind of thinking that we need more people are also resources. So we just need more resources basically. Just use people, use both the users themselves and also those who are helping the users. So I'm kind of thinking. So they can help us understand, because we're not sure that they can actually access the information the same way as we can. So we've got to figure out how do they have to access the information first, and then we can figure that out, and then we can go from there. So yeah, we just need to talk to the users and talk to the people helping those users, because they know how to help them best. So I'm kind of thinking we just need more people resources. If I'm thinking.
Yeah. Absolutely, and we also need more captionists and sign language interpreters. So there are many kind of professionals that we need more of, not only accessibility experts, but also the service providers around accessibility, of course. So Gottfried, where are there still knowledge gaps in research? Can you give us a couple of examples from your perspective?
Yeah, I can only confirm and agree with what Susanne and others said. I think there is a huge gap between frameworks and tools that are being used by mainstream technologies as opposed to where we are in accessibility and in accessible design. So, and obviously some companies and communities need to do their homework first. So it's basically unbearable that people need to spend hours to just make a PDF accessible. For example, so this is just not state of the art. This should work just on a click. The same also for like learn management systems, Moodle and Ilias. I know that there are people working on this, but we need to catch up. It's really, we are behind mainstream technology here, and I believe that we need to be more using of AI technologies. So. To help support users make things accessible. For example, in PowerPoint, you can just get nice designs by artificial intelligence as proposals. So why not make this to use this technology to make accessible designs and propose that? Or you can translate languages. We've actually submitted a paper just translated by DeepL, and it was accepted. So it translates better than a typical student would do. Yeah, and so I think there's lots of potentials here that we're just not using yet.
Yeah, a lot in emerging technology. I agree with you. I think we have only seen the the start of that. So I want to open the floor for questions from the audience because we have quite a few, and we had a couple that came in earlier today. So we have one saying, looking at the future, is there engineering curriculum at university to teach building accessibility in? And another one, it's probably, but what work has been done or will be done to include the standards and more accessibility in various educational curricula in EU universities and courses? So these are, I think, questions for Susanne and Gottfried, because you are the university representatives here. Now you will have to answer for all the higher education in Europe. I'm sorry, but, but Gottfried, do you want to start? Do you know any examples?
Unfortunately, there is no like, okay, this is the one point to go for, or one link or one resource. In Germany, we have our federal system and we have the scientific freedom of teaching, and every professor basically makes their own curricula. So that's really, we can just give recommendations. I know that the German Computer Association is now preparing a recommendation for a media informatics curriculum where this is included with my help and others. Where we have web accessibility included, but it's really hard. And for other countries, it's similar what I've seen and what I've heard in the project. Yeah, so there is something also at, I believe at ACM, the American Computing Association, but yeah, we're working on that. What really is probably the best place is at W3C. They have some basically curricula and also some courses that can be used. So right now, this is probably the best point. I should also mention that in one of the projects that I'm leading, we're actually working on that, and we're also working on a certificate for teachers, how to teach about accessibility and how to make teaching accessible. But that's a future.
Mm-hmm. So Susanne, do you want to add anything on that? We have also kind of evidence from the Nordic countries that unfortunately it's not, there's no kind of efforts to solve this on a higher level, and we find courses here and there, but nothing standardized or something that is mandatory. But do you have anything to add to what Gottfried said? You are muted.
Unfortunately, I cannot add much positive things to what Gottfried already said. So there's some effort in the German Association of Computer Scientists. They are trying to develop a curriculum for web accessibility issues to somehow include it into the software development courses, which are, I think this is something which is taught at many universities, but yeah, web accessibility or accessibility issues in general are not included. I think if they are, it's just a personal interest or personal effort of some lecturer or teachers. So yeah, that's what we have to deal with at the moment. But yeah, I hope at least I think it somehow the sensibility or the interest, I think, is sparking. So it's partly related to personal interest, but partly related to the effort the European government is doing in proposing and yeah, making that accessibility more important. So I think it will change in the next years at university level as well.
Yes, we got a comment on that if employers required accessibility knowledge or skills for employment, then things might change. And we do see it's very, very slow, but we do see that more, especially in the ICT sector, that they require either IAAP certification or something similar to prove that they have some at least basic accessibility knowledge when recruiting. So I think this is changing, but it's going very, very slow, at least for now. So Magdalena, you wanted to say something.
Yes, I wanted to add a positive accent. And I know that's why you invited me, because you like my positive accents. So actually, EDF is starting in January, our new Athena project, where we will like create, we'll analyze different curricula, we'll create recommendations, how to implement accessibility into different curricula of higher education. But what I want to say that the very big part of the project will be actually analyzing and trying to influence the environment, universities and all the institutions, organizations which have impact on this curricula, also student professors, to implement this accessibility. So I think this is good news that your project is finishing, ours is starting. So this work on changing this curricula, on making accessibility like obligatory, I don't know if obligatory to teach, but like to put it in the right place, it's continuing. So I think this is good news. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So thank you for that. So we got a question about the differentiation in the projects between different kinds of disabilities. So I don't know if Susanne, do you want to say something about the UPower project? What kind of the approach of disability groups or target audiences there?
Yeah, I think we are trying to cover as many as different types of disabilities as possible, just how to get a very good idea on what we can do to help maybe some special needs some special target group might have. So I think that's important because it's it's really it's just different kinds of information and different kinds of help people need relating to their difficulties or relating to their abilities. That's another point of view. I think we should always consider that what's the best way to deliver information and knowledge to people with disabilities. So having not only their problems in mind, but as well their abilities.
Absolutely. And in just to clarify, so the UPower project has the European Blind Union as one of the partners, but that doesn't mean that the project is only about visual impairments. It really covers all of them. And we also have the European Disability Forum with us as an associate partner. So that it is really a holistic view on the disability group, so to speak. Anna, you are raising your hand. No, you're not. You're waving.
I'm kind of thinking, I'm seeing a picture in my mind that it's a cycle. You have to start somewhere and then we have to keep going. I'm kind of thinking if the disabled user probably have to be much more proactive and much more reactive and much more demanding. I'm thinking it starts somewhere and then we have to have a user to give feedback on the website, and that if we demand more accessibility, then maybe it will come. So I guess we have to start with the user. We have to find a point and start somewhere, and then everything is a circle.
Yes, that's a beautiful picture. So in the Users as Experts project, we covered very many different user needs and user groups. And the idea with the project was really to start with your own needs. So that's kind of the basis. And then, as Anna said, learn from each other as much as possible. And we did the piloting, and when the group did kind of real world testing of their knowledge, then they did that as a group. So we had all user needs working together, which I thought was a very interesting way of doing user testing, and really the feedback we got from the pilots who got the reports from this group, they were super happy because they got all the different views and feedback from so many different perspectives in one go, which also it gives another flavor than just an expert saying something. So Gottfried, please.
Yeah, this is of course a very complex topic, and we'll never be done with it, as Anna said. So I found it useful to provide for the entry level like a simplified picture. I know it's dangerous to simplify, but at some point we need to grasp things. So I go along the user accessibility needs of the EN standard, chapter 4. So use without vision, with limited vision, without hearing, and so on. And I add deaf blindness and also elderly people to that list. And actually nowadays we should also add people with balance impairments for VR and so. So we need to extend that as a follow-up to the last session about standardization. I think it's useful, and I also always talk about assistive technologies for this user group. And I also stress this is not a medical user group. We're not talking about a medical model. This is basically these disabilities can occur also in specific situations or temporarily. Yeah, if you read the CPAC body of knowledge, there you have lots of content on this, and you know it's not an easy topic, and you have to start somehow and then continue.
Yes, stepwise approach again. So another interesting question is, where do the ideas from your products or areas or investigation come from? So how do you ensure that user needs and interests are addressed during the project? So I don't know who wants to start. Maybe Gottfried, you are still, your microphone is still on, so you can respond to that. Where does the ideas come from?
Yeah, well, scientifically, you have different ways of doing that. Literature research, you can do user research, interview people, workshops, focus groups, and we usually do a mixture of all. We also do design workshops. What I've seen is also as a reviewer of European projects that, and this is a subjective feeling, that we're here, sometimes we go in cycles here. We repeat and repeat the requirements again and again, and we don't have the time in the end to really make them reality. Because that also requires a lot of time. And I know, and I agree that we need to involve users. My take on that is have staff that with disabilities, that's the best you can do, better than conducting workshops. I mean, they are valuable too, and I would recommend them, but don't stick with them, and also think about not sticking in the requirements analysis for projects that require like technical implementations and so on. And then in the end, there should be time of validating things with these people.
Yeah, true. So just from my point of view, the very much less scientific is that the ideas for research could come from experts, so our own experts kind of stumbling over things that doesn't work, or being irritated about things that we want to make better or solve, or from end users or end user organizations who struggle with some new gadget or old gadgets that doesn't work, or maybe an industry partner or a university or a public sector body that kind of has an issue that they want to solve. So that is a little bit how our projects come to life, usually from all these different aspects. And then, of course, I agree with Gottfried, the way we kind of collect user information is we have different tools for that, but really hiring people with disabilities is, of course, a very kind of long-term and sustainable way of understanding much better the everyday life of people with disabilities. So that's a good recommendation. Maybe not always easy to do, because everyone that wants to do user research doesn't have the power to recruit, but in general, yes. So we got a question here, if there is an open source toolkit on how to involve people with disabilities into the process of development, specifically of apps here, interviews, manuals, and things like that. Does anyone have a good idea on a free of charge or free tool for this or resource? Gottfried, you look like you want to say something, so I let you speak.
Just looking up, I think there's something, I mean, there are always pieces. It's not like a complete toolkit, but W3C has something about how to involve users with disabilities. And there, yeah, I need to look this up, but there are other pieces around as well. But eventually, this is really just the wisdom of usability engineering. So we know how to ask users how to harvest what users are saying in interviews and focus groups and expert interviews. And so we just need to make this happen, and we need to, of course, accommodate for the special needs of the people with disabilities in like conducting interviews and focus groups and so on. Yeah.
I'll let you speak in a second, Magdalena, but I'll go to Susanne first. So what was your ending mark, because we really need to wrap up.
Yeah, I was thinking about the resources we developed in our easy reading project, because that's a project we really deeply involved people with disabilities, in this case with cognitive disabilities, into the development process. So we developed a browser add-on in the project, and we during the project we developed some resources on how to involve people with cognitive disabilities in all steps of the technical development process. So that might be a good idea to have a look into this. It's, as Gottfried said, it's not complete, and it's not something you can just take and incorporate into your development process, but there might be some resources which can help to think about some stuff which might occur in cooperation with people with disabilities and users as a general. So I would not say only people with disabilities, but I think user inclusive development of technical devices or technologies is it's quite difficult sometimes. So.
But important. So we can also see that people are sharing ideas and links in the chat. So thank you very much for that. Magdalena, I let you finish off this.
Yes,
this
I have
panel.
very short comment. So I think also a good way when different resources like toolkits are difficult to find, or maybe they're not complete. I think it's always a very good way to approach organizations representing persons with disabilities. And they will be very happy to cooperate, and they will support you in the way how to proceed. So I think just contact people with disabilities through organizations representing them, and it will always lead you to some solutions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we end this on a positive note. That's very, very nice. Thank you very much to my dear panelists. Thank you for contributing and your nice presentations, and also thank you for all the questions. And I will now be silent for a couple of seconds because we need to do something technical. So Malcolm asked me to shut up. So I will do that, and we'll come back in a couple of seconds.